The hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Thousands of eyes from hundreds of different species were fixed on a single figure standing in the center. Her name was Rena, a young member of the Threy, a small race known for peace and gentle nature. She stood tall, even as the council lights glowed harshly on her pale blue skin. Her long hands were chained with a thin beam of energy. Around her, the council members whispered in strange voices that mixed into one great sound of disapproval. High above her, the main speaker of the council, a tall being of steel and silver, rose from his seat. His voice echoed across the chamber. Rena of Threy, you stand accused of breaking the first code of unity. You gave forbidden technology to the primitive worlds. You disrupted the balance of the stars. How do you plead? Rena lifted her head slowly. Her dark eyes glimmered with sadness, but not fear. I did not break the code. I shared medicine with a dying world. They had no cure for the disease that was killing them. I could not stand and watch them fade away. Her words caused a wave of whispers through the crowd. Some members frowned. Others looked at her with cold interest. The speaker leaned forward. Your reason is not the question. Your action broke the law. The council forbids giving knowledge or aid to worlds not ready for it. You have changed their path of growth. You have made them depend on power they do not understand, Rena tried to explain, her voice shaking but clear. They were children in the dark. I gave them a light. If compassion is a crime, then I accept it. The hall grew colder. A being from the Varn race, covered in red scales, hissed loudly. Her kind always hides behind soft words. The Threy are weak. They do not understand strength. This is why they do not rule any system, another voice from a shadowed seat added. If she cannot follow the law, her whole race should be watched. The Threy have no place among the strong. The council speaker raised his hand and silence returned. Rena of Threy, your actions are known. Your words are recorded. You have refused the laws of the council. For that, your membership is removed. Your ship will be marked as rogue. You are exiled from the network of the stars. The sound that followed was heavy and final. A symbol above her name turned from silver to red. Every council member watched as the mark of exile flashed for all to see. Rena felt the ground tremble under her feet. The guards stepped forward and unlocked her chains. Not as an act of mercy, but as a sign that she was no longer worth guarding. She turned and walked out of the hall without speaking another word. No one stopped her. No one looked at her with kindness. Outside the grand chamber, the stars of the council world shone across the glass sky. Ships moved like silver insects, carrying important beings to their meetings and cities. None of them would offer her a ride now. She walked alone toward the lower docks, where the air was filled with the smell of burned metal and fuel. Her small ship, the Saren, waited in a forgotten corner. It was old, slow, and nearly out of power. But it was all she had. Rena sat in the pilot seat and placed her hand on the control panel. The machine recognized her touch and came to life with a soft hum. Her eyes burned with tears that she refused to let fall. The council had not only rejected her, but they had erased her people's honor. The Threy had always believed that peace and kindness were strength, but the galaxy only respected power. She set her course for open space. Beyond any system, beyond the known lanes of trade and law. The engines trembled as the ship lifted off the dock. Through the small window, she saw the council towers fading behind her. The world that once promised unity had turned its back on her. Days turned into long, silent hours in the dark sea of space. Rena's ship moved slowly, guided by an old navigation core. She had little food left, less fuel, and no destination. The stars outside were cold and bright. She listened to the hum of the engines and tried to forget the voices that had called her weak. She opened a small compartment beside her chair and took out a crystal cube. It glowed with a soft blue light. Inside it were images of her homeworld. Green rivers, silver trees, and the tall towers where the Threy once sang songs of peace. Her people were few, scattered across the edge of the galaxy. The council's decision meant none of them would be safe now. Any Threy who tried to help others might be marked as a traitor. Rena spoke softly to the crystal. I did what was right. Even if no one believes it, I know I saved lives. Her voice echoed in the small cabin. There was no answer except the steady sound of the ship's heart. Hours later, alarms began to flash red. The navigation core flickered. The screen showed signs of damage. The ship had entered an area filled with debris from ancient battles. Old wrecks floated silently, broken by time. A sharp piece of metal struck her ship, shaking it hard. The lights dimmed. Rena grabbed the controls, trying to steady the flight. The ship's computer spoke in a calm but fading tone. Warning. Main engine failure. Power dropping. Navigation offline. Rena tried to reroute energy to the thrusters, but the systems refused. Sparks flew from the side panels. The Saren began to spin slowly, falling toward a cluster of unknown planets. She brought up the map, but the system showed no record of them. This region was outside the galactic map. It's unregistered and forgotten. For the first time in her life, Rena felt fear not of the Council, but of vanishing without a trace. She activated the distress signal, though she knew no one would come. No ship would answer a call from an exile. Still, she refused to give up. She adjusted the emergency controls and searched for a planet with a breathable atmosphere. The screen blinked weakly and found one. A small blue world with white clouds and green land. It looked calm, untouched, and alive. The computer identified it with a single word: Earth. Rena had never heard of it. There were millions of planets across the galaxy, and many were not part of the network. But this one stood out. It had an oxygen atmosphere, water, and clear signs of life. It might save her. The ship entered descent mode. Flames covered the edges of the screen as it broke through the planet's upper layer. The air roared around the hull. Metal shook and panels burst with light. Rena gripped the control stick with both hands and guided the Saren toward the green surface below. She saw wide oceans, mountains, and forests racing beneath her. The ship was losing power fast. She aimed for a flat valley near a river, hoping to land before the engines failed. The ship hit the ground hard, sliding across the dirt and grass until it came to a stop beside tall trees. Smoke rose from the sides. The alarms went silent one by one. Rena sat still for a long moment, breathing hard. The cabin was filled with the smell of burned wires. Her hands shook as she unbuckled the safety straps. She looked outside through the cracked window. The world was quiet. The sun was rising behind the mountains, painting the sky with gold and blue. She had survived, but she did not know where she was. She opened the hatch carefully and stepped outside. The air was fresh and light. She could hear birds calling in the distance. The ground was soft under her feet. She looked up and saw clouds drifting slowly. Rena walked a few steps away from the ship and turned, back to see the small trail of smoke curling into the sky. She felt strange peace. After the cold and empty stars, this place felt alive. She knelt by the river and touched the water. It was cool and clear. She spoke softly to herself. This world is beautiful. Maybe it will not hate me like the stars did. She stayed near the ship, gathering a few tools and setting up a small energy lamp from her supplies. Her food was limited, so she rationed it carefully. The nights were quiet. She watched the strange moon rise and fall, wondering if anyone lived beyond the hills. Days passed. The forest around her began to feel familiar. She learned the patterns of the sky, the songs of the birds, and the scent of the wind. But she still felt alone. No signal came from space. No one answered her distress call. Then one morning, she saw movement across the river. Figures stood among the trees. They were unlike any species she knew. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin, and curious eyes. They were humans. They looked both strong and kind, cautious, but not cruel. Rena froze, unsure if she should hide or greet them. The humans spoke to each other in a language she could not understand. One of them raised a hand slowly, not as a threat, but as a greeting. Rena hesitated, then lifted her own hand in return. At that moment, for the first time since her exile, she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this strange blue world would not reject her. Maybe she would find something here that the galaxy had lost. The sun rose slowly over the valley where Rena's ship rested among the trees. Morning light spread across the green grass and touched the edges of her broken vessel. The air was filled with the sound of birds and the gentle rush of water from the nearby river. Rena stood beside the ship, studying the strange blue sky. She had survived the crash, but her ship was badly damaged. The fuel cells were almost empty, and several systems were beyond repair. She had no idea what kind of world this was, or what kind of creatures lived on it. She had seen the humans across the river the day before. They looked curious, not aggressive. They had spoken in a language she did not understand, but their tone was calm. That memory kept repeating in her mind. She could not stop wondering if she should trust them or remain hidden. That morning, Rena decided to observe them from a distance. She moved quietly through the forest, her soft steps barely making a sound on the ground. The forest was full of life. She saw small animals moving through the grass and strange flying creatures with colorful wings. The smell of flowers and wet soil filled the air. It was so different from the cold, metallic scent of space. After walking for some time, she reached a small clearing. On the other side of the river, she saw the humans again. There were 4 of them. One was a woman with dark hair tied back, wearing a light jacket and boots. Another was a man with a beard and kind eyes, who carried a metal box that looked like a toolkit. The other 2 were younger, perhaps students. Taking pictures of her ship with strange devices that glowed, Rena stayed hidden behind the trees and watched. She could hear them talking, their voices steady and curious. Though she did not know their words, she could sense their emotions. They did not seem afraid. Instead, they looked fascinated. After a few minutes, the woman pointed toward the forest where Rena was hiding. The man nodded and began walking slowly in her direction. Rena stepped back, unsure of what to do. She could run back to her ship, but something inside her told her not to. These people had not attacked her. They were calm and open. She waited until the man reached the edge of the trees. He looked around, then stopped when he saw her. His eyes widened slightly, but he did not move closer. Rena could see that his hands were empty. He spoke softly in his language, his voice careful and friendly. Rena tilted her head, trying to understand. She raised her hand slightly to show that she carried no weapon. The man seemed to understand the gesture. He smiled and spoke again, pointing toward the ship and then to himself. It was clear he was trying to say he wanted to help. Slowly, Rena stepped forward until they were only a few steps apart. She could see his face clearly now. His expression was full of curiosity and respect. He extended his hand in greeting. Rena hesitated, then placed her thin blue hand in his. His skin was warm. The woman and the 2 younger humans came closer, watching carefully. The woman spoke a few words to the man, then looked at Rena with a gentle smile. She placed her hand on her chest and said, "Mara." Then she pointed to Rena, waiting for a reply. Rena understood what she meant. She placed her hand on her own chest and said, "Rena." Mara repeated the name slowly, her voice soft. Rena. It was the first time in many days that Rena had heard her name spoken kindly. She felt something warm rise in her chest. The bearded man pointed to himself and said, "Tom." The 2 younger humans introduced themselves to, one named Leah and the other Ben. They were excited. Smiling as they spoke, Rena did not know their words, but she could see the kindness in their eyes. She gestured toward her ship and then spread her hands to show it was broken. Tom nodded quickly, showing his toolkit. He pointed to the ship, then back to himself, clearly offering to repair it. She hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. Tom's face brightened with a smile. He turned to Mara and spoke quickly, and they began moving toward the damaged ship. Rena followed them closely, ready to stop them if they touched anything dangerous. When they reached the ship, the humans studied it with awe. Leah and Ben took more pictures, speaking rapidly to each other. Mara looked at Rena with a calm expression, trying to reassure her. Tom walked around the ship, checking the damage. He touched one of the broken panels gently, then looked at Rena and made a motion like repairing something. Rena understood. She opened a small side panel on the ship and showed him the inside. Tom's eyes widened at the sight of the alien technology. He looked at her with a mix of excitement and respect. Together, they began examining the wires and circuits. Tom did not understand how it worked, but he had a good eye for machines. Rena could tell he was clever. Hours passed as they worked. The humans set up a small camp near the ship. They offered Rena food and water. She examined the food carefully before eating, and to her surprise, it was good. It tasted simple and warm. Mara laughed softly when Rena tried to use the spoon awkwardly. It was the first time Rena laughed, too, since leaving her home world. When night came, they lit a small fire near the camp. The soft orange glow danced across the faces of the humans. Rena sat with them, wrapped in a blanket Mara had given her. She listened as they talked among themselves. Though she did not understand the words, the tone was friendly. Ben played soft music from a small device, and Laia tried to draw Rena's ship in her notebook. Rena pointed to the stars above them. The humans followed her gaze. She spoke slowly, using gestures to show the size of the galaxy and the planets she had visited. They watched her hands move like the paths of ships through the stars. Mara's eyes widened with wonder, and Tom leaned forward. Fascinated, they could not understand her full story, but they could feel the weight of it. Rena placed her hand on her chest and said her people's name softly. Thray. Then she drew a small circle in the air, showing her home world. She shook her head to show it was gone or far away. The humans grew quiet. Mara reached out and gently touched Rena's hand, her eyes filled with sympathy. For the first time, Rena did not feel like an outcast. These people did not judge her by her mistakes or her past. They did not ask about the council or the exile. They simply cared that she was alone and needed help. The next morning, Tom and Ben worked on the ship again, while Leah and Mara prepared more supplies. Rena helped where she could, showing them which parts were safe to touch. She taught Tom how to use a repair tool that released blue light to seal broken metal. He learned quickly and grinned every time it worked. Later that day, Mara brought a small device from their camp that could translate languages. It was simple and not perfect, but it helped. Rena connected it to one of her ship's processors, and together they tried to sync their words. After some time, the device began to recognize a few phrases. Mara smiled when it worked. "Hello, Rena," the translator said in a soft digital voice. Rena smiled back and replied slowly, "Hello, Mara." The humans clapped and laughed with joy. It was a small thing, but it made Rena feel like part of their group. As days passed, they grew closer. Rena learned more words, and they learned a little of her language, too. Tom called her the brave traveler. Mara said she was family now. They told her about their planet, about cities filled with lights and oceans wider than any she had seen. Rena was amazed by how humans lived. They had fought wars, faced disasters, and yet they always rebuilt. Their world was full of struggle, but also full of hope. She admired their strength and unity. They reminded her of what her people once were before the galaxy called them weak. One evening, as they sat by the fire again, Rena looked up at the stars. She wondered if the council ships were still out there, searching for her. But she no longer felt fear. She was no longer alone. Tom noticed her silence. "You are safe here," he said through the translator. "No one will hurt you." Rena nodded. "I believe you," Mara added softly. "You are one of us now." Those words touched Rena deeply. In her heart, she knew they meant it. These humans had accepted her without question. They had given her warmth, food, and friendship, something the entire galaxy had refused to give. The following day, Tom managed to restore partial power to the ship. The engine came alive with a low hum. Rena watched with amazement as lights flickered inside the cockpit. She thanked him sincerely, placing her hand over his. Tom only smiled and said, "Teamwork." Rena stood outside her ship and looked at the horizon. The world was full of green and gold under the sunlight. The air smelled fresh, and the sound of the river brought peace. For the first time since her exile, she felt like she had found a place that could be called home. That night, as the humans prepared to leave for their village to bring more tools, Rena watched them go with gratitude. She knew they would return. She trusted them completely now. She looked up at the stars again and whispered softly to herself, "The galaxy may have rejected me, but this world has opened its heart." In the silence of the valley, her words drifted with the wind, and the stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if they too had heard her. Rena had been on Earth for many weeks now. The valley that once felt strange had become her new home. The humans had kept their promise. Tom, Mara, Leah, and Ben returned often to help her fix the ship and to teach her about their world. Each day brought new discoveries for Rena. Everything about Earth amazed her: the smell of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the laughter of people, and the songs of birds at dawn. Tom built a small shelter beside her ship using wood and metal pieces. It was simple, but strong. Rena helped him by cutting branches and lifting panels with her alien tools. The work was slow, but she enjoyed every moment. She liked watching how humans used their hands, how they smiled even when tired, and how they found joy in small things. Mara spent her days teaching Rena about human language. They sat by the river, repeating words and drawing symbols in the sand. Rena learned quickly. She could now understand simple sentences and answer in short phrases. Her voice, once quiet, became stronger as she spoke more each day. One afternoon, while they practiced, Mara pointed to the sky and said, "Sun?" Rena repeated softly, "Sun?" Mara smiled. "Good, and that?" She pointed to a bird flying above them. "Bird," Rena said proudly. They both laughed. It felt like friendship had replaced the silence that once filled Rena's heart. Ben and Leah often visited with supplies from the nearby village. They brought books, clothes, and food. They showed her pictures of human cities and oceans. Rena studied them with great curiosity. The lights of the cities looked like stars on the ground. She was amazed by how humans had built so much without help from any galactic race. They had done it with determination, not advanced technology. At night, when the sky was full of stars, Rena often sat near the fire with the humans. She told them stories about her people, the Threy, using her translator. She explained how her race once believed that kindness was the highest form of strength. She told them how they tried to bring peace to other worlds but were called weak by the council. Mara listened with sadness. "That is not weakness," she said softly. "It takes great strength to care for others." Rena nodded. "The council does not see it that way. To them, power is control." Tom poked the fire with a stick and said, "Then the council should meet humans. We break everything, fight often, but we always fix what we break. Maybe that is our kind of power." Rena smiled at his words. She admired how humans could joke even about their flaws. They accepted imperfection and still moved forward. It reminded her that maybe strength was not about being perfect, but about never giving up. As time passed, Rena began to help more in the village nearby. At first, people were afraid of her. Her blue skin and glowing eyes were unlike anything they had seen. But when they realized she was gentle and polite, they began to smile at her. Children followed her curiously, asking questions. Rena learned to greet them with small gifts made from shiny stones she found near the river. Mara introduced Rena to the village teacher, an old man named Halen. He spoke slowly, so Rena could understand. He taught her about Earth's history, its wars, its inventions, and its dreams. Rena was amazed by how much humanity had survived. Despite endless conflicts, humans always rebuilt their world. They never gave up hope. One day, while walking through the village, Rena saw a group of children playing with paper planes. They threw them into the air, laughing when the wind carried them high. Rena watched with joy. She had flown ships across galaxies. But this simple human game made her heart lighter than any flight she had known. Leah noticed her smile and said, "You like that?" Rena nodded. "It is simple, but it feels free." Leah gave her a paper plane and showed her how to fold it. Rena followed carefully, folding the edges with her long fingers. When she threw it, the plane glided smoothly before landing in the grass. The children clapped and cheered. Rena laughed, feeling truly part of their world. Days turned into months. The seasons changed, and the valley bloomed with new life. Rena's ship was now repaired enough to fly short distances, but she had no wish to leave yet. She wanted to learn more about the humans. She wanted to understand their courage, their humor, and their endless curiosity. One evening, Mara invited Rena to her home near the hills. It was small but full of warmth. The walls were lined with books and pictures of her family. Rena looked around, touched by the simple beauty of it. Mara cooked food for her, and they ate together at a wooden table. "This is your home," Mara said. Rena looked at her and asked softly, "Home?" Mara smiled. "A place where your heart feels safe." Rena thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, this feels like that." Outside, the night wind carried the scent of flowers. Rena looked through the window at the stars. Somewhere up there, the Galactic Council still ruled, cold and distant. But down here, on this small blue planet, life felt warm. She wondered if the galaxy could ever understand what humans had built without their help. The next morning, Rena helped Tom fix a machine at the edge of the village. It was a water pump that had stopped working. Tom showed her how it worked, and together they repaired it using parts from her ship. When water began to flow again, the villagers cheered. Tom wiped his hands and said, "You are a natural engineer." Rena smiled. "I learned from the best." She realized how much she had changed. When she first arrived, she was silent and cautious. Now she laughed freely, worked with others, and felt part of something larger. She was no longer Rena the exile. She was Rena the friend. That evening, the villagers held a small celebration. There was music, food, and laughter. The children danced around the fire while the adults played instruments. Rena joined them, moving awkwardly at first, then slowly finding rhythm. The people welcomed her into their circle. Ben recorded the moment on his camera. "You dance better than us," he joked. Rena laughed. "Maybe I learned from watching you." The night sky above them was filled with stars. Rena looked up and felt peace. She thought of her people scattered across the galaxy. If they could see her now, they would know that there is still hope for kindness among the stars. But deep inside, Rena also felt a small fear. She knew the Galactic Council might someday discover her presence on Earth. She had seen patrol ships in space before. They would not forgive her for surviving exile. She tried to push the thought away, but it lingered in the back of her mind. One late evening, she sat by the river alone. She noticed something strange in the sky. A faint light moved across the horizon, slower than a star but brighter than a plane. She stood up and watched closely. The light blinked once, twice, then disappeared. Her heart tightened. She knew that kind of light. It was a signal used by galactic patrols. The next day, Rena did not mention it to anyone. She continued to work and smile, but her thoughts were heavy. She could not let harm come to these humans who had protected her. She began checking her ship every night, making sure it was ready in case she needed to leave quickly. Mara noticed her silence and asked, "Is something wrong?" Rena forced a smile. "No, just thinking about home." Mara nodded softly. "You miss it?" "Yes," Rena said. "But Earth feels like home too." Mara reached out and squeezed her hand. "Then you are welcome to stay as long as you want." Those words gave Rena strength. She decided not to run unless danger truly came. She had learned too much from these people to turn away now. If the galaxy ever came to Earth, she would stand beside the humans, not hide from them. Later that week, Rena helped the villagers build a small lab where she and Mara could study plants and soil. She taught them about 3 healing methods, and they shared their own medicines in return. Together, they created mixtures that cured small illnesses faster. The villagers began to call her the healer from the stars. One afternoon, a small child fell while playing and scraped his knee. Rena cleaned the wound gently and used a glowing crystal from her ship to speed the healing. The child smiled and said, "Thank you." His mother hugged Rena with tears in her eyes. Rena felt her heart swell with emotion. That night, she sat outside her ship and watched the humans gather near the fire. Their laughter filled the air. She realized that humanity had something the galaxy had lost long ago. They had heart. They cared deeply even for strangers. Rena whispered softly, "You are stronger than the council ever knew." As the fire crackled and the stars shone above, Rena felt certain of one truth. She had found something worth protecting. The galaxy might have rejected her, but Earth had given her purpose. Months passed on Earth, and Rena had grown strong in her new home. The valley where her ship rested was now familiar and safe. The humans had welcomed her fully, and she had learned much about their world. She had helped rebuild old machines, heal sick villagers, and teach human children the small wonders of the universe. Her heart felt light, and for the first time in her life, she felt part of something larger than herself. Yet, the deep darkness of space, the Galactic Council had not forgotten her. Rena's disappearance had caused anger among the leaders. To them, an exile surviving was an act of defiance, and defiance could not go unpunished. Patrol ships were sent across the galaxies to search for her. They were fast, armed with advanced tracking systems, and relentless in their duty. Rena did not know the patrol was coming. She spent her days working with Mara and Tom, tending to small tasks in the village and repairing her ship further. Every evening she would look at the stars and wonder about the worlds she had left behind. Sometimes she imagined her people watching the galaxy from afar, hoping they would survive despite the Council's rules. One afternoon, Tom and Rena climbed a hill to check the nearby forest for any signs of damage after a storm. As they reached the top, Rena froze. Her eyes widened at a silver glint moving across the horizon. It was unlike anything she had seen on Earth. The object reflected sunlight in sharp flashes as it moved quickly toward the valley. Her heart beat faster. "It is a ship," Rena whispered. Tom turned to her, concern on his face. "Do you know it?" Rena shook her head, her voice tense. "No, but it is not human." They hurried back to the village, warning Mara and the others. Mara looked worried but steady. "We will protect you," she said, "no matter what." The silver ship descended quickly, and soon it hovered over the valley. Its hull was dark and angular, designed for speed and intimidation. The hatch opened, and robotic figures moved down toward the valley floor. They carried weapons and scanners that immediately searched the area. Rena's heart sank. She had hoped that Earth was beyond the reach of the Council, but now she knew that was not true. The humans moved quickly. Tom and Ben grabbed tools and metal rods, preparing to defend the village. Mara gathered the children and villagers, moving them to safer areas. Leah stayed with Rena, her hand holding hers tightly. The humans were afraid, but they did not run. They had learned courage through years of surviving on a world filled with challenges. And now that courage would be tested. The patrol robots advanced slowly. Scanning for Rena, one of them spoke in a metallic voice. "Rena of Thray, you are ordered to surrender. Failure will result in destruction." Rena stepped forward from behind the trees. She raised her hands. "I do not wish to fight," she said. "I have done nothing against you." The leader robot paused. Its sensors scanned her and the humans. "You are a fugitive. Exile cannot escape. Surrender now." Rena shook her head. "I will not return. Not to them. They cast me out. They left my people at risk. I will not obey." The robots activated their weapons, but the humans moved in front of Rena. Mara stood firm, looking directly at the lead robot. "You will not harm her," she said. Tom added, "If you fire on her, you fire on all of us." The lead robot paused, seemingly calculating. It had not expected this kind of resistance. These creatures were small, fragile, and unarmed, yet they showed no fear. The robot spoke again. "You are not authorized to interfere. Stand down." Mara did not move. "We will not stand down. You have no right to take her." Rena felt a swell of gratitude and pride. These humans were different from any race she had known. They did not follow orders blindly. They acted from their hearts, and their hearts were strong. The patrol ship above seemed to hesitate. The robots communicated with each other, scanning the humans' numbers and tools. They realized that Earth was not just a weak planet full of primitive life. These beings had strategy, courage, and unity. They would not give up without a fight. Suddenly, Rena had an idea. She reached into her ship and activated a small device that sent a pulse into the sky. The light flashed and caused the patrol ship to pause. Her intention was not to destroy, but to communicate. She wanted the Council to see that she was protected. The robots hesitated again. Their sensors showed a network of humans moving strategically around the valley. Tom had climbed a hill with tools that could disrupt electronic signals. Mara had positioned villagers in safe zones. Even the children were hidden in strong shelters. Earth's unity was clear, and the robots could not act without risking failure. The lead robot made a decision. Mission aborted. You are not compliant. Returning to patrol command, the patrol ship's engines roared as it rose into the sky. It moved swiftly, disappearing over the horizon. The robots on the ground deactivated their weapons and followed. Rena and the humans watched silently as the threat vanished. Mara turned to Rena and smiled. You are safe, for now. Rena breathed deeply, feeling relief wash over her. They will come back, she said. Tom nodded. We will be ready. We will protect you. Earth will not let them take you. Rena looked around at the humans who had become her family. She realized how much she had learned from them. Their courage was not about power or weapons. It was about unity, care, and determination. They would not abandon one another. The following days were filled with preparation. Rena taught the humans about the patrol ship's technology, explaining weak points and possible strategies. Together, they built barriers, communication devices, and small traps to protect the valley. The villagers worked without fear. Each person contributed what they could, whether tools, food, or knowledge. Through it all, Rena learned the full meaning of human strength. They were not the strongest in the galaxy, but they were unyielding. Their courage was quiet but firm, and it radiated from each of them. She saw how even ordinary humans could face threats that would terrify other species. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Rena stood with Mara and Tom at the edge of the valley. The light painted the valley in gold and orange, and the river shimmered like silver. Do you see it? Rena asked. Mara nodded. Yes, this is why we fight. This is why we protect each other. Rena smiled softly. They will not understand this in the council, but it is enough that we do. Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. No one can take that away from us. Not the council, not anyone. Rena felt warmth in her chest. She had survived exile, crash, and loneliness. She had learned from humans that strength was not measured in rules or weapons, but in heart, unity, and care. Weeks passed. Patrol ships never returned immediately, but the humans stayed vigilant. They trained together, built defenses, and kept communication lines open. Rena's ship was repaired enough to fly short distances, but she no longer felt the urge to leave. Earth had given her more than safety. It had given her belonging. One night, Rena sat by the river with Mara and Tom. The moon reflected on the water, and the stars were bright above. She felt peace, knowing that Earth would protect her, and she would protect Earth in return. Do you think they will ever give up? Mara asked softly. Rena shook her head. The council may try again, but they will see that we are not weak. Earth will not surrender. Tom smiled. Then we have a future. Together. Rena looked at the stars and whispered, I was rejected by the galaxy, but I am embraced here. I will never forget that. The wind carried her words across the valley. The humans around her laughed, spoke, and shared food. They were ordinary, yet extraordinary. They had no ships to command or laws to enforce, yet their hearts were stronger than any council order. Rena knew the future would be hard, but she no longer feared it. The humans had shown her the greatest power of all. Strength was not in domination, control, or fear. It was in courage, compassion, and unity. And Earth, small and humble, had enough of all three to defy a galaxy. The message that Ravi, Mira, Tomas, and Lean sent across the galaxy had traveled faster than anyone expected. It reached worlds that had never before heard of Earth. It reached isolated colonies, wandering fleets and planets that had long forgotten what it meant to see hope. The broadcast was simple, yet powerful. Saul's words carried through space like a calm but steady tide. Humanity was not a threat. Humanity was a force of courage, creativity, and resilience. They had survived wars, disasters, and countless challenges, and in doing so, They had become a species capable of inspiring others. On Earth, the people watched the reaction with nervous anticipation. News screens buzzed with images from distant planets. Some showed alien civilizations cheering and celebrating the arrival of the human broadcast. Some displayed leaders of minor galactic worlds stepping forward to acknowledge humanity openly. Earthlings felt pride swelling in their hearts, but it was different from arrogance. They knew they had been rejected once, yet that rejection had not stopped them. Instead, it had given them a chance to show their true strength in the aurora. Ravi looked at the stars as if trying to count each world that had received the message. Mira leaned against the console, her eyes scanning reports from the outer systems. Tomas worked quietly on the ship's engines, adjusting energy flow to ensure the aurora could travel farther and faster. Lean sat nearby, recording their experiences, carefully noting every new contact, every smile, and every hand extended in friendship. "Look at this," Mira said, pointing to a holographic projection of a distant planet. "The people there are building monuments in our honor. They say humans helped them rediscover hope after their planet suffered a long drought." Ravi smiled, a calm and steady smile. "It is not monuments we wanted. It is connection. Every life we touch is worth more than all the monuments in the galaxy." A soft chime announced a new incoming message. It was from Saul, the Union diplomat who had helped them in the past. His voice carried warmth and relief. "The message has reached every corner of the galaxy," Saul said. "Many leaders are speaking to each other about Earth. They are realizing that the qualities you display are rare, and the Union can no longer ignore the truth. They are divided now. Some want to punish you, but many more want to listen. They want to understand what you have achieved without them." Ravi nodded slowly. "We do not seek revenge or approval. We only want friendship and understanding." Saul's voice was quiet but firm. "Then you will lead by example. Show them what humanity truly is. Show them how to act with courage, patience, and care." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, reactions were spreading like ripples in water. A planet named Cholera had once been devastated by conflict and famine. Its leaders had viewed humans with suspicion, believing the species too emotional and unpredictable. But after receiving the message, Cholera's people began sending delegations of scholars and engineers to Earth. They wanted to learn how humans had organized themselves, how they had survived and thrived, how they treated each other with respect despite their differences. On another world, Viren, a small colony of scientists and explorers sent by the Union itself, openly praised humanity. They released reports describing how humans combined logic with empathy, strength with compassion, and independence with cooperation. Virene's broadcasts encouraged other species to rethink their perception of humans. Back on Earth, Ravimira, Tomas, and Lean continued their journey. They visited planets that had never seen humans before. They helped with construction, shared ideas about agriculture, energy, and science, and participated in celebrations that honored life in all its forms. Every place they visited strengthened the bond between Earth and the galaxy. One day, as the aurora approached, a world covered in emerald forests and clear lakes, Lean spoke up. "Do you think the Union will ever accept us?" she asked quietly. "Do you think they will ever invite us to join them?" Ravi considered the question carefully. "Perhaps," he said, "but it does not matter anymore. We have something better than approval. We have respect, friendship, and trust. We have built a network that values life and courage. The Union may see it one day, or they may not. Either way, humanity has created its own place in the galaxy." Era smiled. "I like it this way. We do not need their rules to guide us. We guide ourselves." Tomas chuckled. "And besides, we do better without endless meetings and endless debates. We act. We help. We connect. That is all that matters." As the aurora descended toward the lush planet, they were greeted by its inhabitant stall beings with soft blue skin and eyes that shimmered like sunlight on water. They had never met humans before, yet they approached without fear. Children ran forward, laughing and reaching out to touch the humans' hands. The adults bowed politely, expressing gratitude for the kindness that humans had already shown across the galaxy. Ravi stepped forward and knelt, allowing the children to place small flowers in his hands. Mira and Tomas helped others distribute tools, seeds, and supplies to the inhabitants. Leanne recorded the moment carefully, her voice filled with gentle awe as she spoke into her recorder. "This is what humanity is," she said. "A species that reaches out, not to dominate, but to understand. A species that does not measure strength only by force, but by courage, patience, and heart." Later, as the humans rested under the glowing trees of the planet, Ravi gazed up at the stars once again. The galaxy seemed different, now less intimidating, more alive. Worlds that had once ignored or feared humanity now opened their doors, and yet Ravi knew that the most important embrace was still waiting, back on Earth. Celebrations had begun in every major city. People had watched the news reports of their friends and family in the aurora. Children waved flags decorated with stars and planets. Teachers held lessons about courage, kindness, and exploration. Scientists shared discoveries made possible by collaborations with alien worlds. Music and art filled the streets, inspired by the stories coming from space. President Anil, leader of Earth at the time, gave a speech broadcast to every corner of the planet. His voice was calm and confident. Humans have always believed that the greatest strength is not in power, but in compassion. Today, our species stands not as one seeking approval, but as one offering friendship. We have been tested, we have been rejected, and we have risen. This is the moment humanity embraces its destiny, not through domination, but through courage, empathy, and unity. People cheered, but quietly they felt a deeper pride. This was not just celebration for themselves, but for every being they had helped, every life they had touched, and every connection they had made. Humanity had learned that they did not need to be accepted by the galaxy's councils to have value. Their actions spoke louder than any vote or decree. Meanwhile, Ravi, Mira, Tomas, and Lean returned to the Aurora one final time before heading back to Earth. Mira laughed as she checked the ship's systems. "I never thought saving the galaxy could feel so normal." Tomas smiled. "It is normal when you do it the human way together, with heart and without expecting rewards." Leanne nodded. "And when every action counts, every kindness matters, and every connection grows stronger." Ravi looked at the stars one last time. "We were rejected once," he said softly, "but we were never defeated. And now, the galaxy knows that humanity does not need permission to shine. Our place is here, with every world that wants to learn, grow, and hope. We are embraced by Earth, and through that embrace, we are embraced by the galaxy itself." As the Aurora returned to Earth, its crew watched the planet rise over the horizon of space. Cities sparkled with lights, forests glimmered with life, and oceans reflected the stars above. Humanity's journey had begun not with approval from others, but with the courage to act, to care, and to reach out. When the Aurora landed, children ran to greet the crew. Families embraced, friends laughed, and leaders welcomed them with gratitude. It was not a return to fame or politics. It was a return to home, to place where humanity's heart had always been. In the days that followed, more alien visitors arrived on Earth. Scholars came to learn. Explorers came to share, and friends came to celebrate. Every exchange strengthened the bonds between Earth and the galaxy. Humans taught patience, empathy, and creativity. They learned new sciences, philosophies, and arts from alien civilizations. Every lesson was mutual. Years later, Ravi, Mira, Tomas, and Lean stood together on a hill overlooking a peaceful valley. Ships from countless worlds floated in the sky, and humans worked alongside their new friends in harmony. Mira smiled and said, "We were told we were too emotional, too unpredictable, too human, yet here we are, loved, respected, and connected across the galaxy." Ravi nodded. "The galaxy tried to reject us, but we never rejected ourselves. We embraced what it means to be human, and that was enough to be embraced in return." Lean placed her hand on Ravi's shoulder. And that is the story we will share for generations. Not because it is perfect, but because it is real. Humanity's strength has always been in its courage, compassion, and heart. Tomas looked at the horizon, where the stars met the mountains. And now, the galaxy knows it too. In that moment, humanity realized something extraordinary. Being human was never about seeking approval, status, or control. It was about connection, kindness, and